All right, we're recording. Um, these things aren't scripted. I just started thinking about what I wanted to say like 14 seconds ago. What I want to talk about is the all-encompassing picture of being an artist. I don't think an artist is something you are from 10 o'clock to 1 o'clock, and then you're a mom, and then you are a carpool driver, and then you are an architect, and then you are, a dad. I mean, the gender isn't relevant, but I don't think this stuff is segmented. I think that very few people choose per se to be an artist. They don't go, this is what I'm going to do. This looks like a really great way to make money. Damn it, I'm going to do this. This looks like a piece of cake. I don't think many people come to that conclusion. I think most folks feel like this is something I got to do. I'm driven. I have a purpose. I'm compelled. I'm compelled to do this. As such, and I think, we talked previously about vulnerability and how strategically being vulnerable works. When you're vulnerable, other people look at that and see themselves. But I think it's about being who you are and reaching inside and having a willingness to reveal that. I guess that says it. The part of being who you are is acknowledging that all of these things in your life participate in contributing to who you are, right? So that, part of what interests me in this discussion, for example, is artists who have children, artists who are married, artists who are not married, artists who are married to other artists, women who are artists who have a man who pays the bills, men who are artists who have a woman who pays the bills, stay-at-home artist, dad, mom kinds of things. I'm trying to look at the lifestyle of what it means to be an artist today. As an aside, what's coming to mind at the moment is I remember doing a webinar with Jason Middlebrook, who we'll talk about more later. And I was talking about how I thought it was important for artists to focus to an extent in the body of work that they do. And he interrupted me, and Jason I've known since he was 6. And he said, Paul, you're wrong. That is so last century. In this century, it's important to be an interesting artist. And I think that remains the case. I guess that also adds to the notion that making good art is not sufficient. To an extent, it's a prerequisite. But somebody's not likely to take your art on at a gallery because they think you are better. They're going to take you on because they identify with what you are doing. It resonates to them. It has some other thing. No more than you want to buy somebody else's art because you think you're going to make money on it. I don't think that's how you guys operate. If you want to buy somebody else's art, you're doing it because it moves you, because you love it and it resonates for you. It's not about the monetary thing for you. Your interest in art is because, I don't know, for lack of a better word, it has soul and it connects. So again, I think this is evidence how it's important to be who you are, and who you are is comprised of all the things that go into your being. And as such, I think it's kind of important to digest those things. But
I can't hear
it. Somebody, but yeah, but Anne, is that you? I'm muting you. And I hope you can hear, but I don't want to have to hear you while I'm talking too. Sorry. And I think you got to be who you are. I think you have to be willing to be vulnerable. I think, Danielle Tegeter is really fascinating to me because she travels a lot and participates in a lot of different activities in other countries. Her husband is from another country. He has a political agenda to his art. He's very involved. And they have a young child. And how all of this gets balanced, I find really fascinating. So that's part of what I want to talk about, is how comfortable you are with being who you are, how you allow or don't, but maybe want to, that to come into your body of work. So I guess I have two questions initially. Who have you listened to that, it again goes back to the same kinds of things. These folks, I suppose, don't strike you as being particularly different than who you are. I think, I hope. So one, is that true? Two, what are you hearing about how people balance things in their lives, this different kind of input compared to what you do? How do you feel about what you do and how it interacts with your art? Can somebody raise a hand so that I can see if somebody wants to talk about that? Otherwise, I'm going to pick on Anne. But, so, Anne, pray for somebody to throw their hand up. I'll unmute you. Don't get carried away yet. I think it's really interesting. I see lots of different kinds of situations. My next door neighbor is the Attorney General of the state of Illinois, and her husband is a stay-at-home dad and a full-time artist. But I guess his straight job is a cartoonist for the New Yorker magazine. I know a dad who took the course. You know, I did a panel discussion about, you know, how having the same topic, and I made the mistake of somebody raise hands. I made the mistake of talking about gender and assuming that it was mostly women who were stay-at-home moms more than there were men who were stay-at-home dads. And the guy sitting next to me on the panel said, I'm a stay-at-home dad. My wife's the big breadwinner. I take care of the kids. I've got twin 10-year-olds. I make art when they go to school. You know, they are part of my art practice, and I incorporate them into it so that I can, you know, feel whole about everything that I do. Cool. Margaret has that. Look at that. This time around, people have hands that are in color. Love that. Margaret, you are unmuted. Go ahead.
Hi, everyone. So I want to share that I have a 31-year-old daughter. When she was born, I was a single mom, and at the time, it was not very easy to be accepted as an artist and as a mom, or as a single mom. But I feel that the situation has changed a lot these days. And what I did, I mean, she was with me all the time. I took her to openings, to everything. I mean, building up shows and everything. And she also became part of my work. So she is like seen in my photographs. And even recently, she has been performing in my performances. So.
How does she feel about it?
At some point, she didn't like it anymore. Like when she became a teenager, I think she hated it. So then also we slowed it down, and she now says that she learned a lot from having gone to exhibitions and yeah, to have seen a lot of art.
You know, I mentioned Jason Middlebrook, and I know him. I've known him since he was a child because his father is a sculptor who I represented when I had a gallery. And his son became, he had two sons and a daughter. One son became a surgeon and another son became a sculptor. Those are really similar activities, actually, you know, things that you do with your hands, surgery and sculpture. Margaret, thank you. I wanted to, hold on, I want to show you something here. I recently received an announcement for Catherine Forster. And she's doing, I don't know if this is it, she's doing an exhibit that's coming up that she's talking about having two daughters who are going through puberty. And one daughter is transitioning from male to female, and one daughter is who's in her 20s or 30s, I think, and the other daughter is 10 or 12 and going through puberty. And her exhibition is about that. I think that's an example of several things. One, the willingness to be particularly vulnerable. I also think it's for me, I think I can't quite imagine what these images are going to look like and how they're going to relate. And it makes me really curious about wanting to see what's going on. I don't want to say this literally, but previously, there's a webinar that we'll watch later on with Elizabeth Smith, who is head of the Helen Frankenthaler Foundation, who used to be the head curator at the Art Gallery of Ontario, and I asked her what got her off her butt to go out and look at exhibits. And to some extent, she said spectacle. I want to see something that I haven't seen before. I want to be educated. I want to have my eyes open. And I think this exhibit that Catherine is doing has the potential to do that. I suppose it also has, the potential that I have high expectations and I can be disappointed. This exhibit hasn't opened yet. I received, an email invitation about it, and I thought that's super intriguing. Somebody else talked to me about your experience of, what do you do with your spouse in terms of your art career? And is it harmonious? Is your spouse supportive? Have you had to get rid of them? Do they, what's the real, are you comfortable with it or what? Somebody talk. Oh, good. Chris, hold on, I'm coming. And I can see more than one hand at a time. It's okay. Chris, go ahead.
Hi, Paul.
Hi.
I just want to introduce myself because I wasn't here last week.
Greetings. Good to see you.
So, hi, everyone. I live in New York City in Newburgh, New York. I loved hearing where all of you were from across the world. I listened to your webinar on Tuesday. I wanted to talk about something about vulnerability that's different than the partner thing.
Okay.
Listening to Mark Kostabi's talk was really entertaining and fun, and he's a character and interesting. And
you familiar with him previously?
No, well, I saw when I was a young woman, I saw that there was a 60 Minutes thing or something about him, and I was horrified.
He's still horrific.
What?
He's horrific and brilliant, both.
No, but I was so naive and I was so idealistic, and when I heard the thing about he didn't do his paintings, and it became this whole thing in my life. He was an example of where the society was going.
Yep.
But I've become more, my life has been more complex and developed. So I loved hearing him. But one of the things, being someone who's lived in New York City most of my life, I find openings horrifying and the opposite of vulnerable. The Thursday night thing, he said to go to Chelsea and go to all the openings on Thursday nights in New York, and that's an essential thing about being an artist. I have, I find one of the interesting things about what you talk about, Paul, and what people that you interview talk about in terms of being ourselves and finding our own truths. I find that antithetical to so much of the art market world. And when I go to openings in New York City, it's so surface.
Time out.
What? Yes.
That's why it works.
Why does it? Wait, tell me what that means.
Because it has integrity to it and it resonates with people, and oh my God, that's different than all the bullshit I get all the time. I'm so glad you showed up.
Right, but okay, that's cool, but it's really hard to even find someone to have one of those moments with it, openings in New York City.
You don't have to have any more moment than to say, we'll deal with this in 2 more weeks specifically. But you do not have to have any more moment than to say one of 2 things. Good show, thank you. Or thank you. That's all, that's it.
But all I'm saying, and I don't know if all of you agree, I hate openings. I can't stand the surface conversation.
Don't participate in them.
Well, I don't. I mean,
go to the opening.
That's one of his things.
The reason to go to the opening is to be able to say to the right person, nice show, thank you.
Right, but just going to them is a waste of time to me, and I'm interested to know.
It's not a waste of time if that's what you accomplish.
Okay.
If you get to say nice show and mean it, thank you, that's all you need to accomplish.
That's cool, but it's not about all of us being in our lives, right? And that's the interesting thing to me about the gap. The reason I'm in this
No,
course,
but when you have, but after you've done this 2 or 3 times with this individual, Chris, you're interesting. You've liked like 2 out of 3 things here. I kind of remember you. You're an artist?
Yeah.
Why do you like these things? This happens a lot.
I know. I don't find it interesting. That's all. I mean, even that.
But that isn't going to be available to you.
Yeah, no, it's not my thing. But I'm interested in so many of these things. The reason I wanted to join you all is I live a very happy life with who I am. And I've been painting for 17 years. I'm a psychotherapist and a philosopher, so it's a thing I do outside of my trade. But there's such a gap between what I do with my art and all this other stuff that goes on. And I'm just interested in the gap. And I'm interested if other people feel that gap.
Okay, well, all right. I don't want to deal specifically with you to the exclusion of others.
No, it's an invitation to a dialogue about vulnerability.
Cool. There are lots of different art worlds, and there are many ways of engaging with the art world. And I'm interested in you fulfilling pursuing what success means to you. And, for many artists, that has something to do, with money.
Mm-hmm.
And money frequently has something to do with, how do I get a gallery? Okay, so that my consciousness is sort of focused on that. I don't think that, grants there's all kinds of other ways that we cover.
Okay.
Okay, but if you don't like galleries, you don't have to do that. I know plenty of people who don't want to. It's a trade-off giving up 50%-ish of your value to somebody else. I would argue it's worth it because they're making a sale for you. But you're still, if that's something you can cover or it's not that significant, awesome. I work with people who don't need to move their art in that manner. I would argue that galleries are really outdated, and getting outdated. And there's a bunch of other models that the internet and technology make available today that,
Yeah, it's an interesting time in that way.
Huh?
It's such an interesting time in that way. And already listening to Mark Kostabi, all of the people you're introducing in the archives that you give us, there's so many things to think about, new ways to connect our art to each other. Which gives you permission to find new ways that nobody's talked about. Yep.
Cool, thank you.
Anyway, that's all.
No, there'll be more. Thanks. Holly, go ahead. How are you? You're unmuted. No, you're not. Yes, you are. Go ahead. Yeah, say words.
Oh, myself. Hi. All right. I want to talk about 2 things. Vulnerability and the openings that Mark Kostabi was talking about. So I'm in the middle of a fair that started Sunday and it'll end tomorrow. It's just a 3-day thing. A general fair where we have people selling clothes and food. And I'm one of 3 artists that are there. So I applied vulnerability in my presentation, and I was very open about my paintings and why I did them, because they were, I decided to tell my personal story through my art. And the very first person that I spoke to about the reality behind the painting broke down and began to cry. And immediately I felt that I had made a mistake. However, she did buy the painting. And she said that she did it because she connected with my story, and it was something that she had gone through about 17 years ago. So there is some power there behind being open about who you really are and presenting yourself in your art as a wife, as a mom, as a person who's suffering, as a person who's happy. It makes sense, and you truly do connect with the audience. All right. Second point, openings, parties. Mark Kostabi has a very specific strategy that I think works in New York. I am currently in a place where it is forbidden for men and women to mix in one place, you know. It's actually against the law. And like the fair that we do have, yes, there are men and there are women, but we are fully covered. The women have to have a head wrap around, and you know, clothes, no arms showing. The men must not show their legs, you know, things like that. So we do not really have parties. Um, I'm finding it a little bit hard to relate to what he was saying because it makes sense for him, but the situation really is different in every place. So what I've been doing here is I've been holding gatherings in people's homes, and that means the most I can get at one place is maybe 20 people, right? And then they come and I just get to talk to them about my work or show maybe maximum 10 pieces at a time, you know? So I've got question marks about that. And also the galleries here have a completely different format from what I've heard the artists speak about, okay? Here it's basically money oriented. You have to put a down payment. For example, to have a 3-day show, you have to put 10,000 real, which is roughly about $5,000 for a 3-day show. And if you do sell a painting, they still take commission on top of that. So galleries has never really been something that I feel like I should pursue. I don't know. That's my 2 cents for today, I think.
That's more like 8 cents. Cool. Can you go around that system?
Yes, I do.
I mean, yeah, I mean, I think that's what you have to do and grow your audience. It seems to me that's unfortunate. It seems to me that, you know, things should be done with integrity and with honesty and about soulful connection, and about you having art that communicates something and about somebody receiving the communication and benefiting from it. You know, it's like the same reason you read a book. You just don't read a book to buy it and stick it on the shelf. You buy it because you want to have a relationship with that aesthetic. And I don't get the feeling that these galleries enable that. It seems to me like, you know, in another discussion, I don't want to blow all my good things, but we talk about the difference between a dealer and a gallerist. And a gallerist is kind of a new term, but an art dealer is someone who is interested in maximizing the transaction, getting as much money as they can right now for them and for you. A gallerist is a person who's interested in your career in the long haul, the big picture. You know, so I think I would prefer to have a relationship with a gallerist. I mean, maybe you make a little less money today, but it's about the whole big picture and being a teamwork and a cooperation. These people just sound like maybe salesmen if they feel like it.
Yeah, that's the reality here, actually. I've not come across a single gallery that is interested in developing the artist, in seeing the long-term, you know, effects of the art of this person. That is not happening here.
But time out. There's no reason that you need to work with galleries there. There are galleries in other places in the world where you are so exotic and so different and so amazing that they're waiting to have a relationship with you. Why you want to work with someone that's a pain in the butt when you can work with someone that wants to give you a hug? Seems to me like I don't know. I know what I would do. I like hugs more than a kick in the butt or a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
All right. Kay, how are you, Kay? I'm coming over there. Go ahead, Kay.
Fine, thank you. Just I've got a question about vulnerability.
Yeah.
Don't you think to be vulnerable, you've kind of got to be strong as well? Because if you're vulnerable and not strong, it could all fall apart.
Yeah, I guess, but I don't know that I want to put that term on it. How about honest?
Yeah, I guess I'm just thinking sort of, because I'm kind of at a stage now where I feel that I can be vulnerable about my work, and I feel that, like, just right now, after painting for 30 years, I kind of feel that I'm becoming more connected with what my real sort of vision is and who I am as a painter, and kind of, and that's kind of, although I've always kind of been honest with my work, it's kind of scary as well.
Perfect.
Okay.
Perfect. You know, I don't know. I mean, I'm talking to some people from Africa, but I'm going to go to skiing as an illusion. You know, when you're standing at the top of a mountain and you're going to commit yourself to gravity, you can predict maybe 1.5 turns, and then life intervenes. And you have to have enough confidence in yourself to know. I mean, you don't want to jump out. You don't want to push yourself off a cliff.
Yeah.
You have to be able to look at the terrain in front of you and go, whoa, that's a little bit of a challenge. I'm up for it. You don't want to go, this is suicide. I'm going for it. You know, I think that's a mistake. You know, so I think it's a balance between being in your comfort zone. I don't want to be the same person tomorrow that I was yesterday, you know, and growth hurts a little bit, damn it. You know, so I'll take some risks. And I drove all the way to the damn thing today to get my pollution tested on my car, and they were closed because it's a friggin' Columbus Day. You know, I make stupid mistakes all the time. I don't know if that counts, but sure it counts. You know what I mean? It's not a great example, but I think we have to, you know, and some of it is also being really willing to acknowledge that we are nowhere near perfect. And that if, you know, like, I can be critical of my spouse, go figure. And but you know, I'm no better than her. You know, I'm just as flawed. You know, I've got to accept that I'm a flawed human being, and there's room for improvement. I know where I'm going, and we benefit by being able to laugh at ourselves.
Sure. Yeah, that's really important.
Cool. All right. I'm not sure who I'm going to next. Chris, is your hand up again? Go ahead. Do you want to say something?
No, my hand's not up.
Well, it is, but I'm going to put it down. It's down now. Don't worry about it.
Okay.
All right. I would like to hear from people who I haven't heard from. Susan, I see you wiggling your fingers. I suppose that counts. Go ahead, Susan.
I don't see the button where it says I can put my hand up anymore.
Fair enough. Let me interrupt and say that I believe if you click on the participants thing at the bottom.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys are in the passenger seat, so you see something different than what I see.
Gotcha.
But every once in a while, I can see people wiggling fingers and stuff. So please go ahead.
I was just saying, in terms of being vulnerable, there's a graph in terms of, you think of it, introducing a new idea to people that you know and don't, even that you most know and don't know. But there's the beginning, the middle, and the end. You think of that bell curve. So you don't want to be vulnerable when you're doing vulnerable things. You don't want to introduce those things to people when you're at the 10 o'clock mark. You want to wait till you're at least 12 noon or to the top of the bell curve, or at 2 o'clock before you get that out there. Because if you're introducing paintings or whatever, your artwork, and you're feeling you have your vulnerability in them, in that initial phase, you're not ready to show it to the world, right? So you have to take that into account when you're standing on top of that cliff going over the mountain.
Wait a minute, though. What about being vulnerable with your art and expressing your vulnerability through your art, so that your relationship's with a hypothetical person and not with someone you know intimately necessarily?
Yes, I'm just saying that when you choose to show that to the rest of the world. If you feel like, because at the beginning she said, I'm not sure if I'm strong enough when I'm being vulnerable. So in order to get strength from that, you need to say, okay, this is where I started from, this is where I am, and I'm ready to show that to people.
Be more specific.
So with one of my family members, I did a series of paintings, and they're based on the sounds of a medication device that went into her system for 24 hours. And I did 10 of them, and I did a series of 6, and I did different artist statements, and I waited till at least I got about 6 of them done before I realized I could share. I was at a place where I could share with the public, so I could separate myself from what I was actually sharing, right? Because when you become vulnerable, it's very personal. So up until that point, for the first 2 or 3 or 4, I wasn't able to share with other people.
Got it. But there wasn't ever, or was there reluctance to make the work?
There wasn't ever reluctance to make the work, but there certainly was reluctance to even show anything.
It's fair.
Yeah.
I get it. Okay.
But it was my best work I've done, I think.
Likely.
Yeah.
And I don't, this is another question. I don't know how much you have to talk about it in terms of vulnerability. I mean, I think you should have to put it in your art. I don't presume that you're necessarily a gifted public speaker or that, you're a great writer. I presume you are a gifted visual artist. So I think you should put it in your art. I can think of abstract artists who have a lot of pathos in their work, and I don't know that it has that same, I don't know that you need to be specific in discussing it, but I think it helps to have the content be present. I don't think you want to dictate the viewer's experience of your art. When I ask people about their art, I ask them what they think their art is about. I don't ask them what their art is about. It helps if we can get a little bit objective, because you can think about reading a poem and how a poem, you assume that it could have different meanings for different people, right? So I think it's okay to be particularly vulnerable in the art, because I think people get in touch with the vulnerability, and I think it's a safe place to go. I think additionally, they see themselves more, which I'm not trying to discount anything you're saying. I think everything you're saying I think all the things you and I are saying are relevant to that experience. Jeff, go ahead.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, indeed.
I want to go talk about the family, the work, family balance.
Fabulous, do it.
I'm an architect as well as an artist, and so I have a wife that's also an architect, and we have a practice together. And so we have 2 kids, and they're teenage, one's out of the house and one's almost out of the house. So growing up, when the kids were younger, I would take a day off of the week and pick the kids up, take them to school, work, paint, and then come back and pick them up after school. So I was able to keep my art going during that process with 1 day a week painting. But what I find is always a tough balance is to be able to deal with pulling yourself away from the family. It's an isolated, you're in isolation. I mean, a painter's life is you're by yourself, and so pulling myself away from the family unit and not being a part of the family unit for periods of time is tricky, especially when they're younger. But now I'm transitioning to the point where they're older and I can spend more time doing my art. So I'm definitely trying to push that into a new frontier and trying to get more gallery representation and do more with that to be able to get my art out there. But it's definitely been a challenge to balance that work and family life.
I think it's even harder than that. I mean, I think to be successful financially as an artist, it's pretty much more than a full-time gig.
Yeah.
You know, it almost takes you and an assistant to, you know, part-time. And working kids into the equation can be really challenging. Nobody's mentioned Michelle Grabner. I mean, Michelle Grabner curated the Whitney Biennial. She writes art criticism. She's a full-time professor. She makes art, and she has 2 healthy children, and a husband who does art. I mean, her art to a large extent is about domesticity, so that helps. And you know, I don't know. I think, Jeff, I think what you're talking about is a really honest challenge, and you know, how one chooses to balance that or not balance it, but accept the imbalance. I find fascinating, and I'm not passing judgment on any, you know, I mean, like, and to one extent, I'm praising Danielle Tegeter for having a pretty damn good art career that she's put together from doing all this stuff and still being a mom. I hope her child is super healthy. I don't have any way of knowing. I hope she's a super, I presume that she's a really, I see her as a really complete, thorough human being. Therefore, I assume she's a good mom. But I've never seen her play mom role. So I don't know. So yeah, I mean, and I can remember as a gallery, I'm going to go with Gallerist, you know, delivering art to clients' homes and having my kids with me, and other people saying, Paul, that's not really that professional. And I went, you're probably right. And I'm going to keep doing it. You know, my gallery, and I don't know, I mean,
Yeah.
you know, I taught my kids to, I remember this clearly. I taught my oldest son to be able to tell the color of a person, to shake their, give them the hearty handshake, and be able to tell me after we met them the color of their eyes. And one day he said, Dad, that woman had 2 different colored eyes. I said, that's cool. And the next time I brought some art to the woman, I told her the story. She said, that's amazing. I've been married to my husband for 11 years, and he never noticed. So, you know, I mean, kids can contribute. I mean, there was another time with an artist, Michael Kessler, we sold the painting to a hotel in Hong Kong. They got the painting. They said, there are footprints all over the painting. I said, how big are they? They said, really small. I said, yeah, artist intent. He wanted those footprints there. You know, he glazed the painting in his studio, right? And the kids ran across the painting.
Yeah.
Oh, well. But that doesn't answer your question about how do I give my kids more time and my art more time too.
Yeah, I don't think there's there's not a good answer to that. I mean, what I guess what I came to a conclusion was that I could balance it by when the kids get older, I'll do more art. When they need me less, I'll do more art. And I just
on
tried
the other
that.
hand, with Camille Seaman, she talked about traveling and leaving her kid at home. And she said, you know, like, what kind of role model am I for my daughter if I tell her to follow your dreams, but make sure you stay home? So she says, you know, I got to go for the sake of my kids. I mean, there's lots. The reason I give all these different webinars is so you hear different voices instead of just mine. And so that you know, find what's right for you. Good luck. William, you're on. What's up?
Yeah, I wanted to, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Michelle Grabner, she talked about, and part of it is about how her work is, because it's like, it's based on work of the hand, it's very repetitive, it's very geometric, a lot of the forms are drawn from quilting patterns and things like this.
Time out.
Right?
Part of where you're going is that she could do it in front of the TV without a lot of mindfulness.
Yeah. And she like views it as a refuge, you know, or an escape from all the hundreds and hundreds of other things that she has going on. And I don't have, like, my work is not like that at all, but it's just curious to me. And like, I just wonder to what degree the form of the work is informing the design of the life, or vice versa. And
Great question.
I don't have a particular answer to that because I'm starting out, but I'd be interested.
I think there's all kind. One of the things that matters a lot is how big is your studio. You know, it's sort of like how big is your closet. You know, if your closet's only 2 by 4 feet, you don't have 5,000 t-shirts. You know, if your closet's a spare bedroom, you might have a lot of crap. And your art might scale up, is the point that I'm going with. That's one variable, and I think all of these things, maybe there's an effort to be pragmatic about how you harmonize, Jeff, what's going on in your life with the art making. Hey, Mark Barker, I'm seeing you looking thoughtful. I'm unmuting you. How do you balance life activities with family, art?
Well, first of all, I'm single, so I don't have any distractions. I'm my only distraction.
Awesome. All right. So this is another variable. I think that a fair number of artists think that the art making and that relationship is more important and choose to not have children and perhaps choose to not have a spouse. Was this by default or by choice, or am I getting too personal?
Well, not too personal, but I'm 68 years a bachelor, so not a consideration, let's say. But there's so much I could talk about right now, because I've all these comments are so relevant to me, even though I don't have those distractions.
All right, we'll pick a thought or two.
And, well, the main thing that I wanted to say was about vulnerability. That I know I just had a show at a local art space, and different from my gallery. This was a nonprofit space, and it was the first time I ever truly branched out from a series I've been working on for the last 20 years. And part of it, so the vulnerability comes about in two places, not only revealing myself, but also just jumping out into a new kind of artwork. And will it be received, etc. What I found was on this one, this is a little more personal, a little more political, a little more substance maybe. I've never had more questions asked of my art than this last show. And a lot of that was part of a panel discussion that I was part of, that we needed to talk about our work and answer questions from the audience. But the main thing there was that this is the first time, and now I'm going back to my comment last time about Eric Fischel. I'm shocked that his collectors don't talk to him about his artwork. He said that he really doesn't have those discussions. I've never had those discussions until recently. And it was when I was the most vulnerable, so to speak. And in the most revealing, most jabbing, the most current. That was one of the places that I wanted to talk about, or just to point out.
Come on, let me say one thing here for a second, Mark, and interrupt you. Keep in mind what you want to say next.
Yes.
Not only do collectors not talk to artists about their art, most galleries are incapable of doing it well either, also. And art critics frequently are talking about themselves and use the art as an example. And the curators frequently have an agenda and, assume what your art, I ask what you think that your art is about, but as a curator, I want to honor what you think your art is about. Mm-hmm. They're going to, they say, well, your art's really not about that. This is really about penguins, and we're going to use it in our penguin exhibit. And you're going to go, wait a minute, I don't want it, but it's a good museum. And so I have succeeded in my life a lot by being able to have intelligent discussions with artists and others about art. And maybe you guys want to do that with other artists too, because it's a really good way to grow community by taking an interest in other people's art. Because what Mark is saying after being a bachelor for 65 years about the absence of substantive art conversations, that, this I find this really, how many of you feel like you have too many substantive art conversations? I think if you could show an interest in somebody else and provide that, you're performing a service and they're going to appreciate it. Sorry to be so long-winded, Mark. Go ahead.
Well, again, I could talk a long time. The Kostabi comment, I don't remember who made it earlier about the openings and all. That's the same way that I feel in Oklahoma City. This opening night chatter is inane, but I do try to go to as many of them as I can, just simply like you're saying, just to be seen, just to make the connection, just to say hi to old friends. But it's usually not discussing of artwork. This last opening I went to last Friday, we have our openings on Fridays, not like New York City. And Fridays, went to an art opening on one of our art walks, and had a great conversation with an artist I haven't seen in probably 10 years, and about his work, about my work and stuff. It was an opportunity to reconnect. So I totally understand that. I don't really like that opening night chatter, but it's kind of required. The other thing that I do personally is that the way I have my art conversations is I kind of, for the last few years, I have a Friday lunch with artist friends. And it's sort of organically grown for a couple of us to 3, 4, depends on the particular Friday. And it's all art discussion. That's what we do.
That's awesome.
And that we sometimes we go to the openings, etc., or we'll go to the museum if there's an interesting show. Kehinde Wiley was just here, so we went to there last month. But more importantly, it's forming that organic growth of a sort of on our part of, we're going to get together on Fridays, and anyone who wants to join us can. And so now it's finally getting to the point where people like to join us. The other thing I wanted to say was that just the intentionality of this class, I think, is already started, in me at least. I've already started to see some of the synchronicities. And that, for instance, one of my clients, I'm not going to go into the story, one of my clients that I've kind of been wanting to fire for a long time, finally, it happened this week, literally. And so, last week, I mean, and it frees up many hours a week already. And I've been trying to get rid of them, and now it's perfect timing. And so I think there's a lot of synchronicities, and even getting in contact with the curator who came here a couple years ago, and now she's on an art advisory board for a local organization, well, up in Tulsa, Oklahoma, a local residency that I'm going to apply for. And now she's on the board of that. A lot of synchronicities have started happening over the last 3 weeks. I don't know if anyone else has experienced that, but I think we're all going to experience that. And a lot of it deals with intentionality.
I think that's true. Beautiful. Thank you very much, Mark. I don't know who said it, but somebody said that one of the secrets to succeeding in the art world can be summed up in 2 words: show up. You know, and part of what Mark's talking about his Friday, this is every week?
Yes. Well, every other week. That's starting to turn into even more often, but it's every other week. Everyone knows we're getting
That's together. A lot of commitment, but it also, you know, I mean, it makes you all accountable. And
there's other groups in Oklahoma City who do this, and they do their things on Saturdays. So or they have their breakfasts, so to speak. And there's a lot of those kind of things around. There's a lot of artists in Oklahoma City and Norman, Oklahoma. So a lot of opportunity for openings and get-togethers.
Cool. I don't see any more hands up at the moment. Somebody put up a hand. I'm going to the full screen view, and I want to hear from people I haven't heard from. I'm looking at, who's the office? What's your name?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Ian. Sorry, I haven't changed that.
Ian, yeah. Oh, cool. I'm glad this worked out. You can change, yeah, somewhere if you're on the participant list or something, you can change that. Do you have an opinion you'd like to share with us?
Just like to say hello to everyone. I'm just north of Sydney in Australia, and this is my first session. I just pretty revved up today. I've got, I just thought I'd show you an image.
Higher, put it in front of your face. Okay.
I got invited to go into a show about men and the way men are perceived in society, which I need to frame up. I've made a meter square print of this, and this was from the Gay and Lesbian Mardi Gras this year, 2017. So in a way, I'm quite comfortable with being, I don't know if I'm vulnerable. I don't think I am that vulnerable. This is sort of a float. It's a bit of an Andy Warhol theme, and it's a bit of a risk for me to do this because a lot of my work is very controlled. This is more fun, I guess, or journalistic or provocative, maybe, in some circles. So I just thought of some terms, fragile but strong. I'm interested in what you think of the term, Paul, fake it till you make it. Feeling like an outsider and actually liking that. So I guess I'm a bit scattered in the head today, but I feel like I'm entering a new era where I've just set up my studio which I call the office at my home, and it's a good space. It's been about 3 years in the making, and I've got a solo show at the Regional Gallery in February, and I'm finding this so far very helpful, and a couple of the things that have been said today, supportive. I have to be reminded that as human beings, we are social animals, and I'm an introvert, and I think I need to, I have been in a relationship, and I'm in the death throes of that relationship at the moment. And I'm thinking that a loneliness or emptiness or gap in my heart that hasn't been opened for about 20 years is still there. And so as much as I'm taking a risk in talking so openly to you, that particular energy I thought last night, that neediness, I need to channel that energy into my art, because that energy is pulling me down and not lifting me up. And so it's that'll do for me today.
Beautiful. That awareness is very powerful. Thank you. And I think this is an example of a willingness to be vulnerable. And, I feel like we empathize, but we all feel like, damn, we should go there too. That's how I feel. I appreciate that vulnerability that you've shared. I'm going to segue to something a bit lighter. Nobody's mentioned Ebony Patterson. And Ebony is Jamaican, and her art is predominantly about the fashion of teenage boys, men, in their late teens, and their desire to be fashionable and not having good role models, and sometimes looking to women's fashion and trying to masculinize it. So it's not, it's a commentary to a large about her society. It's not as autobiographical or personal as Ian is going to be. But it too is an example of a willingness or an honesty about revealing what's going on in one's life. Ian, that was great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, totally. Somebody else want to, hold on, everybody, you can wave your hand in front of your face. Beth, I see you. I see a few others too. Beth, you're unmuted. Go ahead.
Hi. I immediately thought of when I got married, or before I got married, a lot of people didn't really respect the idea about me being an artist. And the person who did, I was shocked. We were just good friends for a long time. And we got married, and he's been very supportive. He's a scientist, I'm an artist, kind of thing. I wanted to have a family. But I also wanted to do my artwork. So I wanted to stay home with the family for 10 years. So we lived in we lived in 4 rooms. And I made a portable studio to carry around in my pocketbook. a journal and all the different tools. And wherever I had
Totally doable, totally brilliant.
I had a big pocketbook, heavy, okay, because I could never decide what to leave out. And I would go wherever I went, I would have the journal with me. And so games or whatever, I just draw during meetings, when the kids were playing, whatever, you know, and I did paintings when I was home. So then after all these years, I had to move because I was renovating my, you know, studio office, and I had to move it out to the studio. It was a garage that we changed to a studio. So I thought I had 30 journals.
Yeah.
I carried 4 loads out to the studio, and I said, this is more than 30. And it was 130.
Holy schmoly.
At the same time, I had someone locally coming in to look for a show. For, you know, he wanted to see my work for a show at a little space in the historical society nearby. He walks in and he says, oh my gosh, what is all this stuff on the table? And I said, those are 130 journals. I don't know what to do with them because I don't have time to read them. I can't believe I wrote in them, and I drew in them. He said, why? That is primary source material.
Yeah.
And that's really, really important. So we did a show with my work, and I collated. I found pieces in my journals that matched my work. We made copies of them. They didn't match, but they picked up parts of the work. And I suddenly realized that I had themes going throughout my work for the last 30 years that I never knew I had before.
Yeah.
And so there are a lot of things that I did to accommodate my family, and my husband accommodated me. And then I got this gift of all of these primary source materials for my artwork, which I'm now plumbing and using for my work. It's like an encyclopedia for my work in addition to what I do every day.
I'm reminded of a couple of things when you talk about that, and it took me a second to look it up, but here's another artist that I've worked with, Judy Gellis. And Judy took photographs her whole life while she was raising children and, you know, kept notes on her photographs. On Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays, Jason is at nursery school, and I get to do whatever the hell I want, watch soap operas, and eat bonbons. You know, I mean, there's, I would love to be able to go to the bathroom alone. I think this is an insane example of, you know, how one's life is at. You know, so I'm wondering as I, you know, hear what you're just talking about and look at Judy's images, if some of these things aren't art in and of themselves already, and it's a matter of how you use them and present them, as opposed to just stimuli, which is awesome, by the way.
That's true. Thank you. No, I mean, I have thought the same thing. I'm just trying to figure out how to do that. And I don't know. I think that you can move things around. There isn't, like you said, just one way to do your work. There are all different ways that you can do it, and it doesn't have to be. I wasted more time when I had more time to waste than I did when I had specific times when I knew I could work, when the kids were asleep. I got up early, you know, and all that stuff. I still get up early. I work before dawn and you know, make sure I get exercise and everything. Because you have to work out like an athlete almost in order to keep yourself going.
I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, I bicycle a lot. Somebody asked me why I bicycle a lot so much, and I said because it takes me that long to find my balance. But I think that's part of the working out thing is that, you know, this, I don't know, making art is just not a hand gesture or a mental activity. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Cool. That sounds super. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
All right, wait a minute. Let me go over to, where's the button I want? Am I still sharing my screen? No. So I have to go up here. Oh, I know where I have to go. There. All right. Somebody want to talk? Raise your hand in front of themselves or anything or something. Or I'm going to call on Danelle because she's moving. Wait a minute, I see Brian. Brian, talk.
Yes, hello everybody.
We got you. Go ahead.
Great. I'm relating very much to what Jeff had to say, because when you see my head turn, it's my kids coming in to disturb me all the time. It is a hard balance to support a family, raise kids, and then try to make work around the edges. And I have found it virtually impossible to have a career in art in addition to that. Here in New York, it's too expensive. I'm spending too much time trying to make money. But luckily, the investment side of my real estate business is getting good enough now that I can maybe stop being a realtor, which has always been very somehow opposite of what I do in my studio, I feel like. But at the same time, that has been a blessing, because that is exactly what I need to be doing career-wise, you know, to actually be able to put myself out there and talk to people and try to get their business. I've learned how to do that as a realtor. And I'm looking forward to starting to apply that to an art career. Since now I have time on my hands, I'm going to be able to pull out of the realtor business in the next year or so. And yeah, it is a very difficult thing. Everybody here who's trying to balance children especially are very time consuming if you want to spend time with them, if you want to.
My only notion is to whatever extent you can, to bring your wife, your partner, your kids, your mom, your dad into the experience, to bring them into the studio. I mean, I think they know what's going on, and I think they feel the division also. And I think to the extent that you can say, hey kids, check this out. Should I go red or green here? I'm not trying to follow you, but what do you think? You know, and I think that I don't know what their role is. Sometimes, you know, I think it's cool to have a kid come in and go, hey, you make the first mark, I'll take it from there. I think there's some kinds of ways to have them involved. I think it's fine to bring the kids to an opening. I think it's good to take the spouse, the partner on jaunts, trips, whatever, as opposed to not having them be part of that experience.
Yeah, I would agree, and I would like to do more of that.
It's hard.
Especially with getting the kids involved in the studio. They like drawing. You know, they come in here and draw with me, but I don't talk about my work with them very much. And I think it would be good to.
You know, it'd be interesting is if I don't know how old your kids are, but hey, what do you think my art's about?
Yeah, no, they're old enough to talk about that. They're 8 and 11.
Yeah, I've got a 4-year-old grandson who says really weird things that I think could be really artful, like, my shoe is bigger than the moon. There's a painting in there somewhere. All right, cool. I think, yeah. I mean, I think it can go further than that. I think you can ask them about what you should do with your art. I don't think it's a bad idea to have them make a drawing and have you take it, incorporate some of what you see in it into it.
I actually do a lot of collage, and there is a bit of their drawing in a couple of those collages that
I think if you can tell them how cool it is that you can include them, how thankful you are for their contribution,
Yeah.
that goes a long way to making shit good.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
All right. We could be out of time, and we can keep going. Does anybody else want to raise a hand or say something? Anne, hold on. You are unmuted. Go ahead.
Oh, wonderful.
And we can hear you.
I got married 8 years ago.
Congrats.
And my husband is a sculptor. I don't have children, but he has grandchildren and obviously children. And I really have enjoyed the fact that one of them is really bonded with me and wants to be an artist. I've given him sketchbooks for Christmas, and he fills every page and he dates his sketches. And he's really taken it so seriously and so earnestly. anyway, getting back to the life, my husband and I do collaborate sometimes and in ceramic. And it's really done wonders for our relationship. We had a good relationship to begin with, but we have never, ever had an argument about the aesthetics of anything that we've done together. And we're in a show right now at the Wichita Falls Art Museum called Artists Who Collaborate. And as the museum director said, a collaboration is not the work of one artist and the work of the other, but a third artist is formed, you know, when two people work together. I mean, it's sort of like it becomes a child. One of the other artists in that show does include her children in her work. She's an excellent draftsman, and she's done wonderful things with their doodles. So it is possible. And getting back to the life of an artist, I found a few years back that I felt like I needed to know other artists in the Chicago community in order to feel more like part of the community, because I spent so much time working alone. I decided to curate an exhibit called Chicago Artists Interpret Shakespeare, because I always felt self-conscious about the fact that I never knew that much about Shakespeare. You know, all I knew was the basic story of Macbeth and Julius Caesar, Romeo and Juliet, but nothing substantive. So I was in a show that was based upon the work of William Butler Yeats, and that was very successful, which another artist had curated. Inviting all these artists to participate in Chicago Artists Interpret Shakespeare opened up a whole world for me, because it forced me to investigate a whole other type of content in what I do. Are you all hearing me?
Yes, indeed.
Oh, good. Okay. And the danger was that one of the two people who were assistant curators of mine got carried away and managed to get 4 or 5 more venues. It's not that I didn't really want to spend that much time curating, but I felt that I had no choice because I am a good leader. However, you have to realize where your curating stops and your work begins. So after 10, I called it quits, but this one individual started a show called Chicago Artists Interpret American Literature and had included several of us. And that was another great way to get a dialogue going about something other than, you know, what do you sell your work for and what shows are you in, etc. It would be a dialogue about what's in the books, what's in the stories, how do you interpret it, what do you want to do next with it.
Do you have a sense that you grew community from these things and benefited peer artists and you benefited, what was the word Mark was using? Synergy. Was it synergy? Synchronicity. Were there things that emerged from this that benefited your career trajectory, or was it isolated?
No, it's definitely helped my career trajectory, because, you know, you talked about the importance of interacting with artists whose careers that you perceive are stronger than yours. One of those artists, who was in all of the Shakespeare shows except one, invited me to be in an exhibit that's coming up at Woman Made Gallery that's called Dreaming Bigger in Strange Times. And it's forcing me to be very political in what I'm doing. I just finished a ceramic that's called Refugees, you know, which is kind of a tearjerker. But I also joined this gallery, sent images over the website, or to the website, and, you know, I created my artist statement. I recreated my artist statement this week. I've done dozens of them over the years and sent it. So I felt that what we had done helped in that way very much.
That sounds really good. I want to emphasize you were generous, good stuff happened.
Yeah, and it's about caring about people. Ultimately you have to really care and love yourself. Care for and love yourself. Care about where your career is going, because it comes from you. It comes from your heart. But extend that same caring to others, and not, you know, be some kind of an egomaniac that only talks about
I have to
themselves.
trick myself to do that. See, so if I trick myself by being generous, and then somebody tells me I'm a nice guy, and then I feel like, oh, okay, I guess I'm a good human being. I better be generous some more. I don't know that, I'm not convinced I'm that generous really. I'm just convinced that it works. So therefore I do it more and more and more.
Yeah. But you also have to know when to put the brakes on, which is something that I learned once the hard way.
Yeah, well, you mean like when to say no?
Well, there was a PBS documentary whereby I was contacted to have the show shown at the documentary, and the guy said, the camera person said, we only want you to speak because we only have a limited number of people. And I said, I need to also have my 2 associate curators speak because I think it's only fair. Well, they cut me out and they put the other 2 in. So that's where you have to realize someone extended something to you generously. Take it and don't feel, just kind of supinely altruistic. So in a sense, I gave them a nice opportunity, but I was sort of mad at myself. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think you learned a lesson that's never going to be repeated.
Yeah. You have to know how to take care of yourself in addition to caring for others. It's just one of the laws of the universe, and
Agreed.
It applies to the art world.
Agreed. Hey, that was all good stuff, Ann. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul.
You got it. All right. Anybody else who we haven't heard from in particular, like Dorothy? Dorothy, do you want to say anything? You're unmuted.
Yeah.
Good.
I've been changing a lot of places, and I was wondering about this art community thing. I've been living in 3 different countries in Africa, in England, in Peru, in Vietnam, in France. So from one place to the other, you change of community. And as I'm very shy, for me, it's always very difficult when I get into a new place to make my small circle. But as soon as you force a bit yourself, then you discover that other people are like you. When you go to a gallery or an opening, if you talk to the real people inside, as you're talking with your real self to real other people, then you start to make real exchanges, real communication, and you discover that a lot of people are wearing a mask to protect themselves, and some maybe like Marcos Tavi is like more business orientated and maybe doesn't put himself so vulnerable, but most of people do. And actually I think this is what is fascinating about artists, is when you know their work, you know them, and when you start to talk about their work and themselves, then you have the real deep thing inside.
Exactly.
And that's when you have started to grow this from one opening to the other, when you go there, actually you start to know people, talk to them, and you don't have anymore that feeling of mask anymore. It's no more business. It's just you're real here. What we all want is to be friendly to each other. Most of them. Of course, there are some people who are not like that, but everybody wants, oh, you came to my opening. Okay, that's nice if you come also to my opening, because I want people to be there. And what is your new piece talking about? Okay, that's interesting, because you get to know better the people when you know their work. And all this, I think, is very important at the end of the day. And I think this is what I try to focus on, because I think, like somebody said earlier on, that we are social animal. And most of the time, what do we want is real relationship. We have, of course, to protect ourselves. But at the same time, when we unreveal ourselves, we discover that we can't really be stabbed. It's, even if we are shy, we suffer a bit and then we grow bigger, I think. So I don't know, is my experience.
You're not shy anymore. So now you're no longer shy, right?
Sorry?
So you're no longer shy.
Oh yeah, I'm very shy.
I have two thoughts. One is that, when I talk about community, I don't feel like it has to be within 1 kilometer or 100 kilometers. I think it has to be, I feel like there's a Klein Artist Works community, and there's a number of people who are in Australia, and there's a number of people who are in North America, and there are a number of people who are in Northern Europe, etc. Most of these people have never met each other, but they're supportive of each other. Some of them are talking about doing exhibitions together and creating opportunities for shows. I mean, to the extent that you could make your work virtual, you could have a show with somebody easily in Australia or South Carolina, just by sharing and being creative. So growing community is good to do locally where you are, but the whole world is available. And I've been doing this course now for 7 years. I'm really interested in working with people from other planets. This Earth community, I've got it figured out okay. It's not a bad thing. It's got some problems, but it's all right. Also, in terms of growing community, not everybody is available. I'm thinking, if you have relationships, a community with 20 people, that's a ton. 6 is, 6 good relationships is, it's a magic number that comes from nowhere. It's kind of like what you need to have a good career. 6 people who genuinely care about your art, want to do something about it. That's awesome. That could be a collector, that could be a curator, that could be a gallery. So you don't have to be all things to all people. Grow relationships where they're available, but I don't think you have to confine your relationship to people you can see physically. Dorothy, that was really good stuff. I appreciate it. Thank you.
I shared.
Anybody else want to say something? Paul, proceed.
I just want to say it's just it means a lot just to hear all your different stories. I mean, we're all coming from different backgrounds, and we have kids. They're not going to be the same kids. They're not going to do the same things, and it's tremendous to hear how everybody is adapting in maybe different ways, but it's all kind of the same story. You're living with that part of you that is kind of the essence of what you have to do when you want to make that art, and you're finding different ways to. So I don't know. It's thrilling for me to hear it.
It's pretty cool, isn't it? I mean, we're all unique, and we're not alone.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that a lot. So yeah, Paul, thank you very much. Anybody else? This is hand in front of FaceTime or waving or something like that. Otherwise, Joe, I haven't heard from you at all, Joe. You're unmuted. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm
we
good.
Can hear you. Do you have anything you want to say besides that?
Well, I have actually a lot. I've been thinking about a lot and writing down thoughts during your conversations. And when we were talking about the vulnerability, I feel like I'm fortunate in that maybe as I'm getting older, I'm caring less about that vulnerability thing. It just doesn't matter as much anymore as it seemed to in the past. But what I find myself thinking about more than ever is the creative process itself. So I've had a lot of variety in my art careers over my lifetime, and I'm thinking, what do I love the most about making art? I mean, why do I even care about making art? And for me, and why do I think integrity of vision is so important? What's that all about? I mean, how is it that maintaining integrity of vision, whether you're dealing with kids or with jobs you're not particularly fond of, or whatever is going on in your life that keeps you away from the love affair you have with your art, I think it's about that exploring and getting to know what feels good about being here on planet Earth. What gives me joy, the feeling of learning something new all the time, that gets me high. I have never experienced anything more fulfilling than my mind changing, like all the things I thought I knew. I found out that, whoa, it's not really like that at all. It's a little bit different. And so I find that to me is what maintaining integrity of vision is about. And so it boils down to this creative process that I'm really fascinated with, the idea that we think of things, we imagine things, we make sketches or whatever, and then we make them into real objects. And it's like they never existed before. And I'm so obsessed and fascinated with that process. And I'm thinking, wow, that's not just about making stuff for a show. That's about getting down to, the very essence of
totally
what I'm doing here, And
what a glorious thing to be as an artist, huh?
Yeah, it's like, we get so stressed out about so many things, but when we think about the joy and the fun we have making art, it's like, wow, what a gift we have that we get to be the ones that really investigate this process. Everyone's doing it. Everybody's creating things throughout their life, but we're all about that, becoming conscious of that process. All the little nuances from, like I said, from thought to object, what a gift in life.
Wow, you guys are all awesome. This is like one of the best webinars, group ones I've ever had. Part of me feels like we should wrap it up on that awesome note, and part of me feels like, why stop now? Does anybody else? Ethel, you want to say anything? You're unmuted, Ethel. You want to contribute?
Talking about vulnerability and being shy.
Yeah, well, that's why I had to call you.
Right. Yeah, I'm not really sure if I want to speak at this moment.
You don't have to.
Yeah, maybe not this time.
Tell me that you enjoy hearing other people say things.
I do. I love it. There have been many of those with whom I'm really like happy to hear them, and I feel resonance with, like Christopher.
Yeah.
The lady was talking in the beginning, and the recent speakers. I'm so grateful to hear them. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you too. Anybody else want to say anything? I'm thinking not right now, but there are people I haven't heard from yet. Dorothy, you want to say something more? Go ahead. Wait. Okay.
I have one more last thing, which is about that family thing. I think it's tough for me to say that. I think I feel I've been the most vulnerable is with my family, because when you do art, if you don't make a living out, of it, that's where it gets tricky, because you're working a lot, and finally you are not accepted in your own family or in your own position because you don't value what you do. And I think finally this is what sometimes gets very difficult, is how because you work hard, and finally money is a big thing in life now, or having a position like in the society. So if you don't have this place, people tend not to consider you. So that's where I think you're very vulnerable. So I think when you put yourself out there, that is where it gets very important, because there you get your room and you can make believe people that what you're doing has a role to play. Sorry.
Basta. Yeah, you're right. And that's not something we've already spoken about this evening. And, you're totally correct. And we're talking about money and how much American society in particular, and the whole world too, thinks money is the way to keep score. And that the more money you have, that's ridiculous, because the people with the most money are all schmucks. Not all, but it seems to go hand in hand. I think we need to understand that being an artist is bigger than money. And it's hard, it's a hard lesson to remind ourselves of, you know, and it's a tough one. It's a challenge on an ongoing basis. I appreciate that. You said it and you're totally right about it. Should we keep going a moment more? Annie, you are unmuted.
Hi, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I would just speak briefly to Chris's point about openings. They are challenging. I hate them. It's an effort for me to get into New York City to see shows. I try to compensate for that lack of visibility by really working hard to create community in my social networks. But when I do drum up the courage to get into the city and go to an opening, I tend to do it, make sure that I have an agenda, two or three things that I really want to achieve, and then I can walk away and feel like, okay, I've done it. I can let it go. One thing I would speak to about family. I'm married. I have a stepson who's 16 that lives at home, and I often do 2 or 3 workshops or residencies a year where I can. And I find that challenging. You know, there's a lot of guilt that I have around it. Because, you know, as an artist, it's, oh, you're going off to this fabulous location. How lucky are you? But, I mean, yes, it happens to be in a nice location, but it's also work. It's what I do. And so I don't feel like my family put that pressure on me, but when I share an opportunity, I feel like there is like a sort of an initial automatic response of feeling like jealous because they're not coming with me. Maybe I'm projecting, but there's that issue of, you know, of it being perceived as fun, but it's really work, and managing the guilt that you feel as a parent that is leaving the home to do something that might feel quite selfish. So it's something that we haven't really talked about tonight, so I thought I'd bring it up.
It's tough. That's fair. Okay.
But we do it anyway, because that's what we do. And we try to make up for it in other ways. So.
Yeah, I think we have to do the best we can, and we can't do everything. And we're all flawed human beings.
Yeah.
And it helps to accept ourselves. And I keep working at it. Anybody else want to say something? Clyde, how are you? Jeff, I'm coming over there in a moment. Clyde, go ahead.
Okay, well, getting back to, you know, you said the galleries are all, you know, smucks. Watching some of the videos and different artist documentaries, I've heard this term come up. I've heard him use it. Said his art or her art is so kitsch. I guess I'm pronouncing it right.
Yep.
I didn't even know what the word meant until I looked it up. You know, lowbrow. And all I can say is if a critic or someone calls my work kitsch, it's a badge of honor for me. Exactly the way I think of it. My work is I want to appeal to the masses. I would like someday to walk into a big box store, a Kmart, a Walmart, go over to the home decor area and find my artwork on bed sheets and towels and plates and whatever, because I know that the person who bought that, they bought it because they probably love my work. And
beautiful. Yes.
If it's kitsch, if it's lowbrow, hey, I think of Thomas Kincaid, Thomas Hart Benton, and artists like that who were identified as kitsch. And I'm in fine company.
There's a whole big difference between those two Thomases.
Well, yeah, there is.
I think Thomas Hart Benton was misunderstood, and I think Thomas Kincaid was, anyway.
Yeah, whole different conversation for those two. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, indeed. Totally. Fascinating. Cool. Thank you. Jeff, there you are. Go ahead, Jeff.
I just wanted to follow up with that comment on work and art being fun and a hobby. And I think of myself as an artist first and an architect maybe second. And I hate that. I know all artists struggle with this because they have to have a day job, but when they go out in public and they're showing their work and people, oh, isn't that a nice hobby you have? Or isn't that? And I really, I'm getting to the point where that's, I can resonate with that. That's really tough to hear. And it's work. It's hard work. It's not entertaining.
It's really interesting to me which professions work and which ones play. Like artists work and musicians play.
Yeah, that's
and
funny.
Baseball players play. They're players, right? Baseball players. You're not an art player. It's just I don't know. Maybe it's just a weird language. I think I'm vacillating between being done and I'm going to call on Diane. And then we're going to be done. Hi, Diane. You just think you can sit there in the corner and I can't see you? Wrong. How you doing? What's going on? What do you want to say?
With the whole kids thing and family and being an artist, for me, I graduated back in '79 from art school, and for a couple of years I plugged along trying to make a living at it, and unsuccessfully. So I kind of gave up on it and decided to focus more on my kids and my family and stuff until they got old enough. And now they're grown and on their own. I'm going back to it again. And it was a really tough decision because I had spent all those years in school, and I'm back in those days. You didn't have the computer and internet and all that stuff that you have today. It was a whole different ballgame, and it was really the gallery system as far as fine art. You had to get into good galleries in order to be found or be able to make any kind of living. And now there just seems to be so much more opportunity. So it's just a whole lot different. That's all I need to say.
This is interesting because it is different and it isn't different. I think the thing that is a constant is that relationships matter. And it's about growing relationships. And I think people you haven't even been in touch with for 15 years, you can call up or you can email and, hey, I don't know why, I was just thinking of you. How are you? You came into my consciousness. I hope you're doing great. What's going on? If somebody did that to you, you'd be flattered to hear from them.
Part of the problem is that there's the contacts haven't been kept. I don't even remember people's names or anything that I knew in college, except for a few people, a handful of people.
Hey, I'm older than you, and some of them I can show up on Facebook, and some of them are off forever.
Right. So,
and
kind of start over.
And we continue from there.
Mm-hmm.
I think that I can't believe you graduated in 1979, number one. Number two, I think you have so much more experience than those who graduated in 2016. You have something to make art about, and tapping into that, the vulnerability thing, I think, serves you particularly well. So I think it's an opportune time to revisit this, as well as this being, to an extent about your growth. And other people being able to look at that and share it. It's kind of hard to share it with your friends. Part of this growing community thing is it's easier to do it, in other places, a bit outside wherever you are.
I wanted to talk a little bit about that. I guess it's been about 5 or 6 years ago now. I had worked at one point for a licensed artist. She was pretty famous at the time. And she was in all the big box stores and stuff like Clive was talking about. And so I had some experience with licensing. And so a few years went by after I had worked for her. And when I was trying to get back into some kind of art career, I was looking at that. And I did a couple of big shows in New York, Surtex and Print Source and some other shows. And in doing that process, I realized my training is in fine art. But even though I have some experience in licensing type art, through that process, I realized that I didn't want people telling me what color to make things and what they wanted. I wanted to make what I wanted. And so that was kind of a learning experience just going through that. So it's brought me back to what I'm about. So the last few years I've got, like reevaluated where I wanted to go and what I wanted to do and what my art was going to be about again. So that was a good experience.
Got it. Cool. All right. I'm getting tired. I think we should wrap this up. Next week, we want to talk about art galleries. And there are a bunch of webinars that I would like you to listen to. This is not an assumption that art galleries are the cornucopia for you and it is necessarily what you want. I think if you are a visual artist, art galleries are something you should consider. And you should decide if you do or don't want to work with art galleries. They're taking a fair amount of money out of the equation, but they're delivering something. That's what we're going to spend a fair amount of time talking about next week. And then after that, we'll talk about what do you do if you don't want to do a gallery, the other kinds of ways to go about it. I think tonight has been really, really informative. I've learned a lot. I've been close to tears a number of times. I think you guys are all awesome. Everybody is unmuted. You can tell each other how wonderful they are. Thank you, everybody. See you in a week.
Thank you, everyone.
Take care.
Thank
Good night, all.
you.
Thank you very much.
Facebook.
Good night.
Get Facebook.
All right.